So I became an ex-Muslim 14 years ago. I was 32 years old. I had just divorced, and I'll try to go fast instead of saying a whole bunch of details. I quickly realized I'm really the only parent. I'll be parenting alone, and I remember thinking this too when I became an atheist. I have to rethink everything, every belief in my head. And of course, I didn't do that. You actually can't do that. You don't even know what beliefs you have.
Can I barge in here and
Yeah.
ask? Was there a kind of a direct connection between that life-changing event and becoming an atheist, or is that something that is not directly related?
Totally. Yes. So you could say the last things that I was holding on to that made me a Muslim. Let me say the first thing, and this is true for everybody, or everybody that was born a Muslim. The first reason that we're Muslims is because our parents told us.
Mm-hmm.
Then at some point we realize that's stupid and we have other reasons. And then we realize that's stupid and we make up new reasons, and so on. The last stage I was in, and of course we don't go all in the same stages. The last stage I was in was, I want to make a family. I want to have kids. I have to teach them morality. I didn't know jack shit about morality because I didn't know much about Islam. That was my logic. Let me marry a Muslim woman who will teach them. And I'm from the Arab. I was born and raised in America, but I have Arab parents, and I got this Arab thing, which is the mother really raises the children, the father makes the money, and that was in my head. And then we had 2 kids, 4.5 years of this marriage, and it dissolved. She kicked me out of the house. She tried to get me back. I didn't want her back. That's crazy to me. And then she thought she was possessed by jinn, and she sought exorcists instead of hospitals.
Wow. Okay.
And that made me realize, so this person followed Islam more, and it ruined her life. That's the opposite of what I was thinking about why I need Islam. So I realized that's all stupid. I immediately became a ex-Muslim.
What was there any kind of going back and forth about this? I mean, did you debate this? Was there some kind of an active?
I don't remember any back and forth at all. And I also don't remember any single event. I also don't remember really thinking about Islam at all. I was only thinking about how crazy it is to believe in jinn and to go to exorcists. So I should explain that part too, I guess. I was born and raised in America. I saw TV shows. By the way, am I too loud?
No, that's fine.
I feel like I'm loud. I watched TV shows, cartoons, Casper the Ghost. So when I first heard about jinn, and I was an adult when I heard about jinn, I immediately knew them as the fake stories that I knew when I was a child. And I remember having a conversation with my grandfather, who later I found out was an atheist. He was a closet ex-Muslim. He told me something about the Quran. He said, it's written for the dumb people and the smart people. Have you heard that logic before?
How's that?
Okay, here's what he said. He said, the smart people, you try to understand between the lines. And the dumb ones are just, I guess they're just reading plainly what the lines are.
Well, I would say probably the dumb people are not even, both smart and dumb probably won't understand the text anyway.
Here's what it led me to. It led me to the idea that, okay, there's a lot of metaphors in there. And by the way, today still, if you ask me about demons, the concept of a demon, it is trying to approximate something about reality. It's getting it wrong compared to our current theories, but it was something. Today we still use words like, I've used words like this before. if we're in some sort of argument or whatever, don't bring out your demons because I don't want my demons to come out.
Oh, well, it's actually interesting that you're bringing the idea of jinn in an American context. This is something that I've never actually imagined that it would be the case, which means that your spouse was of an Arab slash Muslim descent directly, wasn't really
Right.
yeah. So
Right. He's from Syria, born and raised in Syria.
Yeah,
and
because,
initially I thought it's just her, but no, it's extremely normal over there.
yeah, but usually they make fun of the idea of jinn. If you've ever seen that talked about on the internet, that jinn doesn't actually exist or doesn't actually possess anybody who is not a Muslim to begin with. That it actually exists only in the Middle East. And so when you're really talking about jinn, you're not really talking about demons as such. That it's actually something else. There are some specifics about jinn that they exist in the wild.
Sure. But I guess I don't know why exactly. I guess I could have theories on this why, but I immediately knew all these are the same thing. There's also a difference between angels and jinn.
Oh no. Yeah. No. It's not that. It's what's actually funny is that she was possessed by jinn, and she was specifically talking about that possession. She's not talking about the type of being that is supposedly common in Western culture that possesses you and the exorcist in the sense of Christian people. She was.
I don't know how different the American version of this is, which is, I guess, really the Christian version. I don't know how different it is. But the logic of it is all the same. The little difference between angels and jinn is, and this is according to Islam, obviously, jinn have will like humans, and angels don't have will. So angels are more like arms of God.
Well, yeah, we can go into a lot of details about this because supposedly jinn are nations on Earth. They actually have tribes. Some of them are Muslim.
And they live, what, 6 feet below us?
Well,
but if you think you can't find them because they run away, what is it? How does it work?
Well, it depends. You can find them in toilets. So don't flush hot water in the toilet, otherwise. It's all sorts of nonsense that is specifically coming from a desert environment that has to do with mythology that was present.
Yeah, but to be clear, it's all older than Islam, and lots of Muslims will admit that, and they use that as a defense. They say, because lately I use an argument like, how could Islam be true? Or how do I say it like that? I say it like this: Islam is nonsense because look, it believes in jinn, and then they say. Their defense is, let's say they don't believe in jinn. They say, well, no, jinn is older than Islam.
Well, that's great. It means that Islam didn't actually progress anyway.
I don't know. It's really weird because when I spend a lot of time on the ex-Muslim subreddit for the past 3 years, and a lot in the last 4 months. And I don't know how much. I mean, I don't know what percentage of them are ex-Muslims outside of the West, but it's a lot. And yeah, a lot of people there very okay believing in jinn, and I think they even get surprised when we say we don't believe in it.
Yeah.
And they jump when we say we don't believe in it, they think our reasoning is, well, because we don't see it, that means it's not there. But that's not what our reasoning is.
I mean, it's when it comes to some primal instincts in us as primates that lived in the savannah and started thinking about how to interpret things. That conflates God with jinn, with demons, and so on. So it's not that unreasonable for them to say, okay, there is something. Because their inner instincts are actually telling them that. But at the same time, when you start understanding what's going on and you reduce those ideas to what they really are, and understand why it is that you feel that way, feeling a little bit weirded out that someone doesn't believe in this is also weird in itself.
Yeah. So where was I? You asked was there a link between leaving, or like was there a life event that caused me to
Yeah.
become ex-Muslim? Yeah. So the life event was I watched somebody ruin their life by following Islam. And that's not what I thought Islam was for. So yeah, let me skip ahead a little bit now. So I thought I have to rethink everything, but at the same time, it was I had to switch from I thought my wife was going to take care, raise my kids. Then I realized it's just me, which was a huge shock for me because just because you became an ex-Muslim doesn't mean all of your conceptions about everything would switch right with it, like about how raising kids is supposed to be. And I don't remember how much. It wasn't much longer. We're talking only maybe weeks or a few months, and I was already thinking about things like what my kids' education would be like, and I didn't like my education. And I remember thinking, I don't want to leave it up to public schools. I want to be heavily involved in it. I was searching homeschool books, and I found one that explained the classical education, which is the education that all the greatest minds got all the way back to ancient Greece, in the West at least. People like Einstein and Isaac Newton and the forefathers of the US. And what I learned about the classical education was the most important thing is philosophy, or more specifically, epistemology, the study of knowledge. So that's what I've been studying for the last 14 years. And then 3 years ago, I got on Reddit for the first time. I was never on Reddit. And I quickly found the ex-Muslim subreddit. Maybe Reddit found it for me. I don't know how that works, the algorithms. And actually, I would have spent more time on the ex-Muslim subreddit, but I got banned at one point, and I don't even know why. And they didn't tell me why, and I was pissed that they're not even telling me why. So I just ignored the ex-Muslim community worldwide. Fuck all of them. That's how I saw it. It's wrong of me to do that. But 4 months ago, I was on. It was one of those things, Reddit shows you all kinds of posts from groups you're not even in. And I don't even know what group this was, but a Muslim made a post that said, "Ask me anything." So I did my standard comment. Why do you believe in Islam? And it's such a standard comment that people recognize me from it. One of the people from the ex-Muslim subreddit saw it and said, "Hey, Rami, how you doing?" And I didn't remember who it was, but I found out it's a mod from that subreddit. And I mentioned, yeah, I was banned, and he got me back in. I could have came back in if I tried, but I like I said, I was pissed that they had kicked me out without telling me why. Anyway, so that was 4 months ago, and I was posting so much, and it was successful posting, that I turned it into a newsletter, and they now pinned it to the sub. So there's only 2 pinned positions, and I have my newsletter there all the time.
Okay, that's great.
My newsletter is 70 plus Reddit posts and now YouTube videos. And I guess I jumped ahead. What I quickly found out in the last, this is now 3 months ago, is that the thing that people in that subreddit are complaining about the most is the death penalty. Not the smaller stuff like, oh, my parents are going to disown me if I tell them I'm an ex-Muslim. And that's bad. That's horrible. Okay. But the biggest one on the list is death penalty.
But if that other aspect of also the family and financial consequences and other things are also,
they're very big. They're huge. Yeah. I gotta say, I still have both my parents, meaning in my life, like even though I'm an ex-Muslim. And one of them is still a Muslim. So like I have no troubles that these other people are having, where they lose their family. I don't know how you can function by losing your family. By the way, when I divorced and I had to take care of my kids, I couldn't have done that without my mom and my dad, mostly my mom. That wouldn't have gone well. She was the mom for a while. So yeah, I'm not knocking the idea that losing your family is not a big deal or anything, but the death penalty was definitely higher. You could tell from what people were saying. They're afraid of getting killed, and then there was also stuff that was happening. This maybe happened a little bit later. I did an interview 7 years ago with a Egyptian guy. He had a YouTube channel. He doesn't have it anymore. He doesn't have an email. He doesn't exist anymore on the internet. And I know why. After talking to my mom, it's a common thing. Death penalty. They catch you and they tell you, take all your shit down or we're going to put you in jail or death penalty.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of happening, not to me, but my interview is missing from the internet now. My friends are missing.
Yeah, yeah. So, in Egypt, the situation is a little bit murky because on the face of it, after the Arab Spring and people started talking and they felt a kind of an illusory sense of security and they started coming out. There was a crackdown, there was the Muslim government, but then even after that, people started backing down, mainly because the new political atmosphere doesn't actually favor that. And so you saw people, like you said, there were people who were very active in Egypt, and then they all of a sudden started disappearing. I know of at least 3 people who changed strategies in Egypt because of that. And I wouldn't say necessarily it's the death penalty from the state itself, because as far as I know right now in Egypt, they wouldn't go that
in all those cases, it's jail time. But who the hell wants jail time for 10 years?
Well, it's not only that. It's the main fear for ex-Muslims doesn't come only from the state. It only also comes from the mob that could actually lynch people.
But the state still helps because they either turn a blind eye or they help.
Well, the state wants to be on good terms with the big political players within the society itself.
Oh, okay.
And so they if some murder or something of that sort happens, it's not a great thing for as a murder, but they wouldn't really mind it so much because this is something that would please the essentially the mob, the people who felt that this person who was talking something about religion is now silenced.
So I realized I was telling the story and I skipped too far ahead. 3 years ago, when I said I found the ex-Muslim subreddit, I was doing a lot of things. It wasn't just the ex-Muslim subreddit. I was trying to find all the good subreddits. And there was a bunch I was involved in. Jordan Peterson subreddit, Intellectual Dark Web subreddit, Sam Harris subreddit, all of those. And I was trying to have a lot of important discussions, mostly about epistemology, but the bigger stuff, morality, a lot of things. And what made me do this? Okay, so 14 years ago, one of the most important books I found was The Beginning of Infinity by David
Deutsch.
And so 11 years of that was my biggest influence. The community that was built around it too, of people talking about that book and other things. And in a lot of this, in some of this writing was an article by Elliot Temple. And at the bottom of this article, he mentions Feynman's speech.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched that speech, but the first time I watched it, it was great. I didn't notice anything that I noticed recently, because that was 10 years ago or something. But for whatever reason, I watched it again 3 years ago, and I noticed something in there that I had never noticed before. Maybe it's something small, just that. Well, here's what it is, and what Feynman was explaining wasn't something just about science. It's about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Scientific thinking is needed in all matters, not just what a lot of people think, which is if it's an empirical issue, then science matters. If it's a not empirical issue, then science doesn't matter at all, which is completely wrong. I didn't see, maybe I saw that before, but Feynman's speech after I watched it 3 years ago, or maybe it's 4 years ago now, it really got in my head that, and this is the way I say it now, I say it differently than even I said it 4 years ago. We need to take all the best intellectual ideas and methods from all the fields, not just physics, not just physics and chemistry, not just physics, chemistry, and biology, all of them, okay? And not just the ones that we traditionally know as the hard sciences or the soft sciences. Every stinking field, even if it's theology, okay? Even technically, okay, I want to be clear about this too. Karl Popper, which by the way is like the David Deutsch says he's a Popperian, okay? So Karl Popper is a huge influence to David Deutsch. Karl Popper said, and what Karl Popper was doing was he was trying to understand how scientists make scientific theories. And another way to say that is he was trying to understand the difference between science and pseudoscience. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was watching the Feynman speech, he was doing the same thing. He's trying to explain the difference between scientific methods and pseudoscientific methods. Where was I going with this? Karl Popper, David Deutsch, the connection. Okay. So if I was to boil down Feynman's speech, it's, you know, we have a term now, a verb for doing the mistake that Feynman was explaining, cargo culting.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the cargo cult?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I actually worked on the translation of Dawkins' book, Outgrowing God, a few years ago. And this was one of the major themes there.
Okay. Yeah, so this is really good. I'm not the only one saying Feynman's speech was important.
Yeah.
So what cargo culting is, and the way Feynman was explaining it, you know, he was giving examples even in the field of physics. They are doing the cargo culting. And the example he gave was basically shortcutting the scientific approach, skipping steps so that you could save time and produce more publications to get more funding.
And it's actually worse right now compared to when he said that.
I'm sure it would be. I'm sure things are worse than back then. More generally, what it is you're just sacrificing truth-seeking for another goal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the worst kind of that, the most aggressive version of sacrificing truth-seeking for another goal, is willing to kill someone to get them to not talk to other people about whatever it is. So it's the apostasy laws.
Right.
They're killing us to prevent us from truth-seeking. It scares us into, you know, avoiding talking about it. That's why it's still here 1,400 years. Imams say that. There was imam that was caught on video. I say caught because I think if he understood what it meant, he wouldn't have said it on video. But you can find it on YouTube. He said, well, if we didn't have the apostasy laws, we didn't have the death penalty, Islam wouldn't exist today.
Yeah, I think it's one of the Egyptian clerics, could have been Qardawi or Huwaini or someone like that. Yeah.
So even from their own mouths, they know this is to prevent truth-seeking. So this is just another version of what, and to be clear, there's a cult here. It's a cult behavior. This is what cults do to get people to avoid criticizing the cult and to learn about the cult.
There's probably more layers to this when it comes to if you want to classify something like a huge group that has nearly 2 billion people as a cult. It is definitely a cultish behavior.
So I'm not calling anything a cult, by the way, because here's the loose definition. Any group is a cult to the extent that it does cult behaviors.
Yeah.
So if it does 0 cult behaviors, it's not a cult at all. If it does 1, it's like a little bit like a cult. And you can say the same thing about the word stupid. I am stupid to the extent that I do stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Any group is a cult to the extent it does cult behaviors. And Islam's not the only one. The US does it with, for example, the way it treats whistleblowers as traitors.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and this is huge. I'm trying to bring this out. After the Civil War, the American compulsory education system was created, and it was intentionally designed not to make us smart or to do anything that we want. It's to make us obedient. And I wish the guy was still alive, the guy who wrote these books, John Taylor Gatto. He was a New York City school teacher for 30 years and won awards. And then he published his book with all this information in it, I think initially in 1995. I didn't find it till way later, and I didn't become anything important enough. Like, I contacted him, but he ignored me. What was I? But recently I contacted his agent to try to get him or someone with him to speak on my June 14th event. And he initially replied, but so far he's ignored me since then.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I'll be talking about it by myself or with you. But anyway, I want to bring out all the cult behaviors. You know, even worse than what Islam has with the death penalty is North Korea. First of all, you're not even allowed to leave.
Oh, that would definitely be classified as a cult for sure. When I was thinking about Islam as a cult, I would say that it was most definitely a cult at the time of Muhammad, because you must have some kind of a charismatic leader who's able to enforce his will onto others and have them create a kind of a group that does not tolerate any kind of dissent or any kind of difference of opinion. North Korea is most definitely that. They literally,
because not only will they kill you, they'll kill your whole family and your clan.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get somebody from North Korea who defected.
There was so Christopher Hitchens actually did quite a bit of work on North Korea. He covered it journalistically, but also wrote exactly about these things. He definitely showed a great deal of what's actually going on in North Korea when it comes to that kind of cult behavior that's prevalent there. Yeah, it's that definitely qualifies as one.
I want to be clear too that using the term cult is for marketing reasons.
Right. Yeah.
It's to link two groups: the ex-Muslims who care about the death penalty, and everybody else who maybe isn't so attached to that, but people that care about what Feynman talked about, scientific-minded people in the West.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to unite them.
Yeah,
that's goals. Now, here's the link, okay? What is it going to take for us to get rid of apostasy laws? Well, there's going to be a lot of obstacles, and I guarantee you the biggest obstacles are things that prevent truth-seeking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If the U.S. made an education system that made us all dumb, that makes it harder for the U.S. citizens to do anything about the apostasy laws. That's a 150-year-old thing that's been going on in the U.S. And we're not the only ones. The entire world's got stuff like this going on. You know, when there's huge actors bigger than any one nation, there's actors that are not a part of a nation. They're above that, and they're functioning across many nations, and they're doing things that aren't necessarily, the right shit. It's just stuff that would help. They think it would help them, like defense contractors.
Mhm.
They want to make more money selling weapons, so they start a war somewhere. Even if that, I mean, I'm sure you could come up with examples. Actually, I want to ask your opinion on this. So there was a time, I don't know how many, 200 years ago, let's say, lots of Islamic nations or nations that are Muslim majority have slavery laws, or they allowed slavery. But since then, today, all of those nations now have laws banning slavery. Am I right?
Um, on the books, well, yeah, well, they don't have actually laws as such banning slavery, but they abolished slavery as a kind of an act, especially for countries that did have some slaves. Although I would probably say that in places like Mauritania, for example, they probably have something still going on up to this moment.
Well, we technically have that in the U.S. too. We have some
Right.
slavery happening.
Yeah, but I'm talking about actual slavery in the
And
classical sense.
okay, and like having a market where you buy and sell slaves.
Yeah, there might be some stuff of that sort that's still going
Okay,
on some level.
so the question is, what caused that big change to happen, and can that happen again with apostasy laws and blasphemy laws?
No, I don't think that this is going to be happening as easily, and there is a reason for this. When it came to slavery, slavery was very much connected to a lot of commercial interests. So people would buy and sell people and profit from that. When it comes to apostasy, it's really hard to come up with anything other than a humanitarian set of interests, values that need to be upheld, things that would go much deeper than, okay, give up selling people and buying
And it needs
people.
to be another method. We need to convince enough people inside those countries and in our countries, so that inside those countries, I mean, if a Muslim majority country becomes mostly not Muslim, then things are going to change, right? Maybe.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I
So
think
we can do it from the inside.
yeah, and there is something that's going on that is not necessarily under the control of people to begin with. So connecting to what you were saying earlier about how the scientific method is important, but the scientific method itself, when it comes to the society, is not something that's easy to implement. There is another quote that comes from Carl Sagan, who was talking about how we live, and he was talking about the West. He wasn't talking about anywhere else. He was talking about how we live in a society that is so dependent on science and technology, but actually is so ignorant of science and technology. Now, this is the fact that this quote is possible at all at this time tells you that there's actually something that's changing the underlying problem to begin with. So, for example, right now, when you're looking at how science and technology has helped change some of our dependency on archaic systems like religion, you can see that there is something that is happening without a kind of a deliberate act on the part of people. Okay, we want now to change that and have people wean off of religion when it comes to economic need or health care or things of that sort. And so there is something that's going on because of these changes that are outside the control of anybody. And so this infuses, in some sense, some awareness in the minds of the public that if science is capable of producing technology and having all these benefits, maybe there is some value over there. maybe that the thing that produced that, which is the scientific method that was underlying all this, is something that could have some benefits that go beyond just producing a cell phone or making better crops or whatever.
So there was a big part of the Feynman speech that I didn't explain yet. He apologized to the world, and he said, "I'm sorry, but we have not been teaching you the scientific approach directly. We've only been teaching it to you through examples."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. The solution is to teach it directly. Now, here's the thing. When you erase epistemology, the study of knowledge, from an education, you're doing the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So not only are we not being taught epistemology in our education, and then we get to university, and the few of us that make it and have a brain enough to even like physics, even they're also still not teaching us directly what is the scientific approach. A lot of us are learning it anyway, which is, how we have, like, I wonder, Feynman spoke directly to Einstein, I'm pretty sure. He was right. He had conversations with him. Feynman spoke to Karl Popper, and Karl Popper spoke to Einstein. All of those conversations, even if they're not directly talking about the scientific approach, you're learning how other people think by talking to them, even if they don't explicitly say what the logic of what they're saying is, Yeah. So physicists who are going through university, they're learning from the other physicists who learned it from other physicists, who going all the way back to Newton. And if you could understand the classical education, well, it actually died in between. There was huge periods of time where it's just books. You couldn't learn it from a human. You had to learn it from books that they left, which isn't as good.
There is something that's definitely lacking when it comes to instituting methodology when things are being taught to people at universities. That's definitely the case. Has it improved since Feynman? I cannot say for sure, because it's a long time, but from the point of view of pedagogy that's actually going on at universities, I would probably say that there is some kind of an improvement. Wow. Now, going out beyond the universities, though, that might be an issue, and having it actually understood by people outside of an actual research context, that's an even bigger challenge, because then you don't have the basis for doing that in a kind of a systematic way that would not make it only as a kind of, that's what scientists do, but into something that, this is something that I can use in my life. That's
in every part.
Yeah.
There's another physicist, Ellie Goldratt.
Mm-hmm.
In the 80s, I don't even know what school he was in, university in Israel. He started to have his friends in the business department nagging him with questions. Mm-hmm. He became a business guru. In 1984, he wrote his first book, The Goal. Mm-hmm. And he's so new in this, like Feynman, he didn't make any videos. Like, there are videos of him, but that's camera crews that were doing that. This man, he's newer. He made videos. They're actually for sale on the internet now. There was a 24-hour lecture that I bought for $1,000. I listened to him for 24 hours. Genius man. He said when he was 20 years old, he decided to himself, his goal in life is to teach the world how to think. He probably gathered the same concept I did from Feynman. Okay? And that is what he created. He was describing the scientific approach. The name it goes by today is theory of constraints, and people know it as a business theory. But it's really any organization, and it actually applies to a single person too. And it is, how do I say this? It's not even a different level than any of the other stuff that, let's say, is in the beginning of infinity. It's different stuff that you can mishmash there, and a lot of it is kind of saying the same things. Like if you ever hear anyone talking about problem solving or goals and achieving goals, those are actually the same thing, different terminology. There's a lot of things that are just the same thing, just different terminology. And so I think he made a lot of headway. His work affected thousands of gigantic corporations worldwide. So there's a ton of those people who learned all that stuff that, it's definitely, even inadvertently, even if they're not trying to, affecting the rest of their lives.
So if we're talking about this within the context of an organization, people learning this as part of their profession, and if you want to think about this extending beyond an organization, is that something that connects with what you have in mind? Is it something that is doable from your perspective?
Are you asking specifically about theory of constraints?
I'm talking about this general way of thinking. If it's going to actually leave an impact on society as a whole, it's not only within
I think it applies to everything. Even something so small like what I noticed in the ex-Muslim subreddit, that everyone's confused about Karl Popper's falsifiability concept.
Right.
What I noticed is, and they're confused on both sides of it. Like, there's people who believe in jinn, and then when they hear if they hear the sentence, jinn as a concept is not falsifiable, they think that means you can't say it's wrong. That is not what it means. What it means is we throw it out from the start. If it's not falsifiable, it's trash from the beginning. This is how we know what a superstition is. A superstition is something that, I'm going to say it in different language, it claims to affect nature, but there's no way to test it.
Well, I have a kind of an example here that I sometimes bring up in courses that I teach, and it confuses people about how this actually happened and what sort of position we have from it right now. So when it comes to the theory of relativity, the way that it actually worked was by discarding the model of the ether that was supposed to be the carrier of electromagnetic oscillations.
Okay.
So
is that from Maxwell's work?
Yeah.
So ether concept?
Yeah. So it starts from there, and the problem here is that people for the better part of maybe 200 years thought that you had to have some kind of a medium in order to carry the oscillations of the electromagnetic field. And what Einstein did was basically to show that this is an unfalsifiable principle, essentially. And so it's not something that he disproved as such. He was showing that it can be discarded because it's useless. It became so ambiguous that it lost its explanatory ability to show that there are phenomena that can be predictively understood in terms of it. And so it became useless because of that. It hasn't been disproved as such. You cannot disprove something unless you have some deductive logic. If you're going through a syllogism and you're trying to discard things deductively. What happens in science is that you get rid of things through falsifiability. If something is not falsifiable, it's not going to have any predictive power. And that would be applicable in the case of jinn. If you're able to...
Santa Claus and bad luck and a whole bunch of things. And when I talk to people about this, mostly the Muslims, but also ex-Muslims get confused about it. When they say, "Oh, I remember somebody saying this: you can't know that hell doesn't exist. You can't know that." So and instead of trying to teach them, concepts and new words, I'd rather use examples. So I say, but I can know that hell doesn't exist in the same way that I know Santa Claus doesn't exist. It's the same logic. It's no different. And I give other examples too. So, but the thing is, those same people, they believe all sorts of those things too.
Oh, what about something from ancient Greece? There's plenty of gods over there.
Right. So here's what ends up happening. They end up only believing the ones that their culture has. They don't believe any of the ones from other cultures. Zorro was telling me this. You remember Zorro, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. He's here, by the way, if you want to talk to him. Maybe I could have thought of this, but he was explaining to me he was saying specifically about demons and jinn. Somebody from the Arab world or Muslim world, they'll believe in jinn, but they won't believe in demons. They're the same, but they're not using logic to try to figure out if they're the same or not. They are different words, and they more focus on words than concepts. That's a separate problem. People get fooled by words so much. And I notice physicists don't do a lot of that. Physicists don't get confused by just because there's two different words, that doesn't mean we're talking about different things.
Yeah, but
I think it's because a lot of our work isn't even in words.
Yeah, true, but I wouldn't give all physicists credit for being so.
They do get a lot confused by words.
Well, what I would say probably is that many physicists don't give the same credence to philosophical thinking as such. So there's definitely precision when it comes to the way that you phrase things, but when it comes to actually going deeper into some of those ideas, they're
kind of just turning their brain off, though, right?
Yeah.
They're not using their scientific approach skills on this whatever subset of ideas.
Yeah, and there's something here to say about specialization. So when you're so specialized in a very specific area, sometimes you shut off your brain when it comes to the big picture. And that's actually definitely one of the risks when it comes to comparing what we have right now with, say, when you're talking about people who were educated a century ago, where you were able, so to speak, to have knowledge of everything that's out there, or have something to be able to say intelligibly about it. Right now, this is not as easy for people who eventually get specialized. I can have someone who is specialized in some specific type of physics, for example, going to another type, they wouldn't even know how to handle themselves there, let alone going to the bigger picture that involves some philosophical aspects.
See, what's weird, I don't know if it's weird. When I liked physics, but I also loved chemistry and biology. I was learning all that stuff in university even. Mm-hmm. And I remember there were times in my, let me remember which class, surface physics. We were studying surfaces. This is like the last year in physics in university. And I had already had years of chemistry. And I noticed a connection. There was one day where I was easily understanding what the teacher was saying because of what I learned from chemistry. And yeah, so I was seeing connections between different fields that are, but those are pretty close though. Physics and chemistry is so fucking close.
Right. Right now there are some active efforts to create these interdisciplinary majors and approaches to, so that such gaps.
It's already very interdisciplinary. I can't say that word because you know, if you're going to go get a degree in biology, they make you take chemistry and physics. So
Right.
it's already like that. They know it's connected.
Yeah,
but I was doing more than the normal. You know, there weren't physicists who gave a shit about biology.
Yeah, but I'm what I'm having in mind is not the undergraduate education, but the one that goes beyond. But during the undergraduate studies, you have a very broad scope.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
And then it becomes narrower and narrower until eventually you're speaking about
it's so narrow, and no one's trying to go general anymore. Well, I do think the best specialists are also very good generalists.
There has to be some kind of so if you want to be productive in a creative way in that particular field, you have to be able to think outside the box anyway. And if you are just thinking about whatever path that you went through, you won't be able to do that.
Yeah. So is that enough about me?
I think so.